Hi YouTube, it's Kathy and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up for July 7th through 13th. This week I read 3 books, I watched 2 movies, and I listened to 1 book. Welcome back to my parents' basement. I will be going back to my actual house later today, but I wanted to make this video first. The first book that I finished this week was On a Sunbeam by Tillie Walden. This is a very large graphic novel, although I consumed it on the website and didn't have the physical brick of a graphic novel available to me. This graphic novel has a couple of different timelines, one being in the present following a crew of people that work on a ship that refits different buildings in space. And the other timeline is about 5 years previous with the main character at a boarding school, also in space. I didn't really know anything going into this, and I think that's all I want to give you as kind of the synopsis, but to tell you kind of some of the side elements of what's going on in this graphic novel. There are no men. All of the characters, with the exception of one non-binary character, are female. And there's some beautiful female-female romances. In addition to that, the art in this graphic novel is absolutely beautiful. As I was scrolling through it on my computer, there were just so many spreads that I was like, I want this on my wall, or I want this as the wallpaper on my phone, or I just want to see this more often than just reading through it this one time. The second book I finished this week was also a graphic novel, and that was Mooncakes. I had seen a lot of people hauling this from Book Expo and BookCon because it is still in ARC. It doesn't come out until a little bit later this year, but I managed to get a copy of it through NetGalley. And as a surprise to no one, this is also a queer graphic novel. This also has a non-binary character. So if you like magic, witches, and werewolves and trying to solve a mystery, this will definitely be something you'll be interested in once it comes out. The next book I finished was Valiant. This is the second book for Fairy-a-thon, and is the second in Holly Black's Modern Fairy Tales. At least I think that's what the series is called. This is a series from the early 2000s. Although there is a little bit of overlap with what happens in this book and what happens in the first book, we are following a completely different main character. And as per usual, I knew nothing going into this, so it changed very quickly within the first 2 chapters. Val is an athlete, she has a boyfriend, something traumatic happens, and she ends up going to the city for the night and then just never really leaving the city. While she's there, she falls in with some street kids, and there are elements of the fairy magic that we got from the first book, but a much darker turn on it. Trigger warnings for this book include sexual assault as well as drug use, so keep that in mind. And additionally, I wish that previous Kathy had kept track of names of people and places in the first book to refer to this book, because there was a little bit of crossover, but there were these characters that I was like, have I met this character before? Is this just a completely different character with a similar name? I'm not entirely sure. And I also straight up don't exactly remember what happened at the end of the first book because I've read about 20 books in between them. So part of me really wants to start taking notes when I read books so I can go back and look at them when I read further on in the series, but another part of me just really likes sitting down and reading books and just reading books. So I don't know if I'm going to change my habits. Maybe we'll find out the next time I start a series. On Friday, I took 3 planes home from New Brunswick to BC, and on the longest flight, there were movies available, which is how I finally got around to seeing Bohemian Rhapsody. I don't think I have to explain this movie, but in case you're unaware, this is a biopic about the band Queen. I don't really know much about the band besides knowing their hit songs, so I have no idea how historically accurate this was, but it was well performed. I wouldn't describe myself as an audiophile. I don't listen to a lot of music, but obviously I have heard Queen's music before because it's really hard to live in North America and have never heard of Queen. And I found the ways that they worked the different songs into the plot and also gave us some backstory as to how some of the songs came to be was really interesting. Also, the concert at the end is something that I would have loved to have been at if I, had been born at that point, which I wasn't quite. The other movie I watched on the plane was one I had never heard of, but the thumbnail on the program was just a picture of Viola Davis, and I said, I'll watch whatever this is. This movie was called Widows. Viola Davis was the protagonist of this movie, and her husband and 3 other men were killed while they were doing a heist. Because of the circumstances of that heist, she and the widows of the other men now have to band together to do a heist of their own. This is a thriller with a lot of politics and at least one major twist, and honestly I would just watch Viola Davis act in anything, so I enjoyed it for that. The audiobook I listened to this week was Roomies by Christina. This book follows Holland, who lives in New York City and works for her uncle, and is trying to write a novel, but she's not actively trying to write a novel. She also has this obsession with this busker she sees at a train station quite often. She thinks he's very cute and he plays very well. So when a contract is ending at the theater she's working at and they need a new musician to fill this specific part, she thinks that he would be perfect. However, the problem is that he is in the country illegally and would need some form of work visa to be able to do this. Holland's boss makes a really snide comment about how she's already in love with him, so she should just marry him, and then she actually does. It's a fake to real relationship book. I really enjoyed it. I think I'm probably going to end up enjoying everything that I read by Christina Lauren. Just because I've read 2 in the past couple of weeks and the steamy scenes are nice and steamy, sometimes they come out of nowhere. But then you also get really right into the feelings of the characters, and that is something I always really enjoy in writing. I love being right along with the characters as they're feeling everything their heart could possibly feel. I actually just had a hold come in for another one of their books that I had never heard of before, and then I'm on the very long holds list for their latest book, so I'm sure that I will read more of their books in the future. That's it for this week. My next video will be back in my own home, which will be the first time in weeks. If you've read, watched, or listened to any of these, let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!